My mother renamed me to please a man I barely knew. 10 years later, I stood in her living room, ready to reclaim who I was. At 12, I was still Emily Harper, the girl with her father's eyes and her grandmother's stubborn streak. My dad had been gone for 3 years, taken by a heart attack that left a hole in our family no one could fill. Mom tried, she really did. She'd make his favorite lasagna on Sundays, play his old jazz records, and tell me stories about their high school days. But grief has a way of bending people, and by the time I was 12, Mom was bending toward Richard. Richard Coleman was a man who walked into our lives like he owned them. He was a contractor, all broad shoulders and loud opinions, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Mom met him at a community barbecue, and within 6 months, he was at our dinner table every night, his boots tracking mud on the floors Dad had laid himself. I didn't hate Richard, not at first. He was polite enough, bringing me candy bars and asking about school. But there was something about the way he filled the room, like he was trying to erase the space Dad used to occupy. The name change came out of nowhere. I was in 7th grade, doodling in my notebook during math class when Mom picked me up early. She was fidgeting, her hands twisting the strap of her purse as we sat in the car. "Emily," she said, her voice too bright. "We're going to make a fresh start. Richard and I are getting married, and we thought it'd be nice for all of us to share the same name. You'll be Emily Coleman now." I froze, my pencil still pressed against the paper. "What about Dad?" I asked, my voice small. Mom's smile faltered, but she pushed on. "Your dad would want us to be happy, sweetheart. This is about being a family again." I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. The idea of losing Harper, the name that tied me to Dad, to his laugh, to the way he'd carry me on his shoulders, felt like losing him all over again. The paperwork was filed that week. Mom didn't ask for my opinion, didn't even let me read the forms. By the time I was 13, my school records, my library card, even the monogram backpack Dad had given me for my 10th birthday, all of it said Emily Coleman. My friends noticed, whispering in the halls about how I'd changed overnight. I'd correct them, my voice sharp. "It's still me. It's just a stupid name." But it wasn't just a name. It was a piece of me stolen without my consent. Richard moved in and our house changed. Dad's old records disappeared into the attic, replaced by Richard's country music blaring from a new speaker system. The walls, once covered with family photos, now held pictures of Richard's fishing trips and Mom's new smile, one I barely recognized. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes, like she was waiting for me to be grateful, to embrace this new life she'd built. But all I felt was a quiet, burning anger, growing like a knot in my chest. By high school, I was a stranger in my own home. Richard wasn't cruel, not in the obvious ways. He didn't yell or raise a hand. But he had a way of dismissing me opinions, my memories, my existence. "You're too young to understand," he'd say when I questioned why we couldn't visit Dad's grave as often. Or, "Let's not dwell on the past, kid." Mom would nod along, her eyes pleading with me to play along, to make things easier. I tried for her sake. I smiled at family dinners, helped with chores, even called Richard Dad. Once, when Mom's eyes lit up with hope. But it felt like a betrayal every time. The real trouble started when I turned 16. I got a part-time job at a local bookstore, saving every penny for college. I wanted out of that house, out of the name Coleman, out of the life Mom had chosen for me. One day, I found an old photo of Dad and me in a shoebox under my bed. We were at the county fair, my face smeared with cotton candy, his arm around me, both of us laughing. On the back, in his messy handwriting, it said, "Emily Harper, my forever girl." I cried for hours that night, clutching the photo, realizing how much I'd lost. That's when I started pushing back. I stopped answering to Emily Coleman at school, telling my teachers to call me Harper instead. They hesitated, citing records, but I was relentless. "It's my name," I'd say, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. My friends caught on, and soon, Harper was scrawled on my notebooks, my locker, my life. Mom noticed, of course. Why are you doing this? She asked one night, her voice sharp as she stood in my doorway. It's disrespectful to Richard. Disrespectful? I shot back, my hands shaking. You didn't ask me, Mom. You just decided I wasn't Harper anymore. You decided Dad didn't matter. Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. She just turned and walked away, leaving me with the echo of my own words. The years that followed were a slow unraveling. Mom and Richard grew closer, their lives intertwining in ways that left me on the outside. They bought a new house, one I had no say in, with a room for me that felt like a guest suite. I spent more time at the bookstore, losing myself in novels where characters fought for their identities, their truths. I applied to colleges far away, dreaming of a place where I could be Emily Harper again, fully and unapologetically. By the time I was 22, I was in my final year of college, majoring in literature, living in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates who called me Harper without question. I hadn't been home in over a year, not since a disastrous Thanksgiving where Richard made a toast about our family, and I excused myself to cry in the bathroom. Mom called occasionally, her voice tentative, asking about classes or if I needed money. I kept the conversation short, unable to bridge the gap between us. But then came the letter. It arrived in a crisp white envelope, Mom's handwriting on the front. Inside was an invitation to their 10th anniversary party. We'd love for you to be there, Emily, she wrote. It's a chance to celebrate our family. The word family stung, and I almost threw the letter away. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the photo of Dad I kept on my desk, his smile urging me to face this. Maybe it was the weight of 10 years of silence, of anger I'd carried like a stone. I decided to go on to celebrate, but to finally say what I'd been holding back. The day of the party, I drove 6 hours back to our old town, my stomach churning with nerves. The new house was bigger than I'd imagined, with a manicured lawn and a driveway lined with cars. Inside, the living room was packed with Richard's friends, Mom's coworkers, and neighbors I didn't recognize. A banner hung above the fireplace. Happy 10th anniversary, Richard and Laura Coleman. My heart sank at the sight of Mom's name. No longer Laura Harper, but fully absorbed into Richard's world. Mom spotted me first, her face lighting up as she rushed over. Emily, you came. She hugged me, and for a moment I wanted to sink into her warmth, to pretend nothing had changed. But then Richard appeared, his hand on Mom's shoulder, and the moment shattered. Good to see you, kid, he said, his tone too casual, like we were old friends. The party was a blur of small talk and forced smiles. I wandered to the edge of the room, clutching a glass of water, watching Mom laugh at something Richard said. She looked happy, but it wasn't the happiness I remembered from when Dad was alive. It was a polished, practiced kind, like she'd molded herself to fit this new life. I felt like an outsider, a ghost in a house that wasn't mine. Then came the speeches. Richard stood up, glass in hand, thanking everyone for celebrating our decade of love. He talked about building a life together, about family, about unity. Mom beamed, her hand in his, and I felt the knot in my chest tighten. When it was her turn, she spoke about new beginnings, about how Richard had given her a second chance at happiness. She didn't mention Dad. Not once. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stood up, my legs trembling, and the room went quiet. All eyes were on me, the daughter who'd been gone for so long. Mom's smile faltered and Richard's brow furrowed, but I didn't care. This was my moment. Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. You changed my name 10 years ago. You didn't ask me. You didn't tell me why. You just decided I wasn't Emily Harper anymore. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. Mom's eyes widened and Richard shifted uncomfortably, but I kept going. That name was all I had left of Dad. It was his gift to me, his legacy. And you took it away to make your new family feel whole. Mom opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I wasn't done. I've spent 10 years trying to be Emily Coleman, trying to fit into this life you wanted. But I'm not her. I'm Emily Harper. I've always been Emily Harper. And I'm done pretending. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Richard stepped forward, his voice low. Emily, this isn't the time. But I cut him off, my gaze locked on Mom. You made a choice for me, Mom. You chose Richard over Dad, over me. And I've been carrying that hurt for a decade. But I'm not carrying it anymore. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket, a copy of the legal form. I'd filed to change my name back to Emily Harper. I held it up, my hand steady. This is my answer, I said. This is who I am. Mom's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Richard put an arm around her, but she didn't lean into him. She just stared at me, her eyes searching for something I couldn't give her. The guests shifted awkwardly, some looking away, others whispering. I didn't care. For the first time in 10 years I felt free. I turned and walked out, leaving the paper on the table. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped outside, the stars bright above me. I thought of Dad, of his laugh, of the way he'd call me his forever girl. I was still her. I always would be. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked to my car. The anniversary party's muffled voices fading behind me. My heart was still racing, but there was a lightness in my chest, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd carried too long. I slid into the driver's seat, the photo of Dad and me tucked into my bag, and took a deep breath. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd reclaimed Emily Harper. But as I pulled onto the highway, the headlights cutting through the dark, I couldn't shake the image of Mom's tear-streaked face. Had I gone too far? Or had I not gone far enough? The drive back to my apartment was long, giving me too much time to think. I replayed the moment I'd stood up. The way the room had frozen. The way Mom's eyes had searched mine for something, forgiveness, maybe, or understanding. I didn't hate her. I never had. But love doesn't erase betrayal, and what she'd done wasn't just about a name. It was about erasing a part of me, a part of Dad, to make her new life fit. I wondered if she'd ever truly realized what it cost me. When I got home, my roommates were sprawled on the couch, laughing over a sitcom. How'd it go? Sarah asked, glancing up. I shrugged, not ready to unpack it. It was intense, I said, dropping my bag and heading to my room. I sat at my desk, the legal form to restore my name still in my pocket, its edges creased from my grip. I smoothed it out, reading the words again. Emily Harper. It felt like a promise kept, not just to myself but to Dad. I taped it to my wall, next to his photo, and let myself cry, not out of sadness but relief. The next morning my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Can we talk? It read, simple and raw. I stared at it for an hour, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the distance grow until it was unbridgeable. But another part, the part that remembered her making pancakes on Saturday mornings, her singing off-key to Dad's jazz record, scowled, let go. I typed back, not yet. I need time. I hit send before I could overthink it. Days turned into weeks, and life pulled me forward. Finals were looming, and the bookstore was busier than ever with holiday shoppers. I threw myself into work, into late-night study sessions, into being Harper again. My professors started using my real name without hesitation, and my friends celebrated it like a victory. But the victory felt hollow sometimes, late at night when I'd lie awake, wondering if Mom was hurting as much as I had. A month after the party, I got a letter, not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter, the kind Mom used to send when I was at summer camp. My hand shook as I opened it, recognizing her loopy cursive. Emily, it began. I've been trying to find the words to say I'm sorry, but they all feel too small. I messed up. I thought I was doing what was best for us, but I didn't see how much it hurt you. I want to understand. If you'll let me, I want to try again. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper. She didn't mention Richard. didn't defend the name change, didn't make excuses. It was just her, raw and honest, maybe for the first time in years. I didn't write back right away. I needed to sit with it, to feel the weight of her words against the weight of my anger. Christmas came and I decided to go home, not to the new house, but to Grandma Harper's, Dad's mom, who lived an hour from Mom and Richard. Grandma's house was a time capsule. Same floral curtains, same creaky porch swing, same photo of Dad and me on the mantel. She hugged me tight when I arrived, her arms strong despite her age. "You look like your father," she said, her eyes misty. "Stubborn as hell, too." Over dinner, I told her everything: the name change, the party, the letter. Grandma listened, her face unreadable until I finished. "Your mom made a mistake," she said finally, her voice steady. "But she's your mom. She loves you, even if she's got a funny way of showing it sometimes." "What do you want, Emily?" "Not what your dad would have wanted, not what I think. You." I didn't have an answer then, but her question stayed with me. What did I want? I'd spent so long fighting to be Harper again, I hadn't thought about what came next. Did I want Mom back in my life? Could I forgive her? Could I trust her not to hurt me again? A week later I called Mom. She picked up on the first ring, her voice shaky. "Emily," she said, like she couldn't believe it was me. "We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between her house and my apartment, neutral ground." When I walked in, she was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups of coffee, one black the way I liked it. She looked older, her hair streaked with more gray than I remembered, her eyes tired but hopeful. We talked for hours, haltingly at first. I told her how the name change felt like losing Dad all over again. How Richard's presence had made me feel like an intruder in my own home. She listened, really listened, her hands wrapped around her mug like it was an anchor. "I thought I was giving you stability," she said, her voice breaking. "Richard was safe. Solid. I was so scared of being alone after your dad died. I didn't see what I was taking from you." I nodded, my throat tight. "You didn't ask me, Mom. You didn't let me choose." She reached for my hand and I let her take it. "I know," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I can't undo it, but I want to make it right. Tell me how." It wasn't a magic fix. There were no grand gestures, no tearful promises to erase the past. But it was a start. We agreed to keep talking, to rebuild slowly. I told her I was keeping Harper, legally and forever, and she nodded, no hesitation. "It's who you are," she said, and I believed she meant it. Richard was the harder part. I didn't want him in my life, not the way he'd been. Mom admitted he'd pushed for the name change, thinking it would unify us. "He didn't understand," she said, her eyes downcast. "He thought it was just a name." I didn't forgive him, not then, maybe not ever. But I told Mom I'd try to be civil for her sake, if he respected my boundaries. It was the best I could offer. Over the next year, Mom and I worked at it. We met for coffee every few weeks, sometimes talking about Dad, sometimes about nothing at all. She started sharing stories again, one she hadn't told in years: how Dad proposed at a diner, how he'd cry at sappy movies. It hurt, but it healed too, like stitching a wound. Richard stayed in the background, and I was grateful for that. I didn't need him to be my father. I had one, and his name was Harper. By my 23rd birthday, I felt like myself again. I graduated college, landed a job at a small publishing house, and moved into my own apartment. On my birthday, Mom came to visit, bringing a gift wrapped in blue paper, Dad's favorite color. Inside was a leather journal, my name embossed on the cover. "Emily Harper. For your stories," she said, her voice soft. I hugged her, and for the first time in a decade it felt like home. Looking back, I don't know if there was a right or wrong in what happened. Mom made a choice out of fear and love, and I made mine out of pain and truth. We both paid a price, her the distance between us, me the years of feeling unmoored. But we found our way back, not to the past but to something new. Justice for me wasn't about punishing Mom or Richard. It was about reclaiming my name, my story, myself. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not alone. Families are messy, and love doesn't always mean agreement. Have you ever had to fight for who you are? To stand up to someone you love, not to hurt them, but to be whole? What's right, what's fair when it comes to family and identity? I'd love to hear your thoughts because sometimes the hardest battles are the ones that teach us who we're meant to be.